Master from East Carolina University. She also holds a certification in the care of adult medical and surgical patients. She is a wife, mother, and born-again child of the Most High King.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Cable TV. We are so glad that you are being able to share with us on today. So every Thursday, the health of our families do matter. So we are here in the studio. I have with me online with two of my favorite people. Especially one Angie, who I've gotten to know over the years, who has been sorry, we're switching out some things here. Okay. How's that? Is that better? Okay. They said keep talking. I'm sorry. So Angie is a dietitian, a nutritionist, and she's also a diabetes specialist. And so she has always brought some really exciting things to the table. And we have her intern with us, Deena. She's wrapping up things, and she's going to be sharing with us. The last time we had these special people on with us, we were talking about nutrition and the values of nutrition. Okay, and so today we had people that ask about labels and how to read labels. And I'm trying some new things in my life, and I said, yes, let's bring them back. So we have with us Angie, and Deena is going to talk about how to read labels and the nutrition facts on these labels. So I'm not going to talk much, and they're going to be sharing. So I'm going to sit back and I'm going to absorb all this information that they have to say to us and share with us. So everybody get your pads and your pencils out and be ready to take some really good notes, because we have some really exciting information to share. And also, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to try to share our screen because we want to actually be able to see the label. So people in Radio Land, if you want to, come on over to Facebook and watch us on Facebook. And if not, we're going to try to talk things really clear so that you can hear and understand. But here we go. So Angie, I'm going to let you start off and go forward and talk about nutrition facts and labels.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Wendy. We're excited to be back and talking about nutrition. There's just so much to cover with nutrition, and we really did want to focus on nutrition facts labels for this session. So Deena and I will be kind of taking turns sharing some information. And one thing when we look at the nutrition facts label, we say, well, why do we use it? Why is it important? It really is a great tool to help you make informed food choices. So, sometimes we can choose very healthful foods. Sometimes we may choose foods that are not as healthy. But either way, that knowledge is power of knowing, what's in that food. And then you can consciously choose, okay, yes, I want this healthier item, or, okay, maybe I'm going to indulge a little and I'm going to choose this item over here. So really the information on the label can help lead us to learning lifelong eating habits. And one thing that I tell my clients is, when you first start reading food labels, it takes a long time. I had a client say, I spent 2 hours in the grocery store because I was trying to take, time to read these labels. And it does take time initially. But most of us eat the same 15 to 20 foods over and over and over again. So for instance, if you eat yogurt as part of your diet, once you find that yogurt, the brand and the flavor and all of that, you're going to buy the same one over and over typically. And so you're not going to spend all that time all the time. Once you take a few moments to compare items, find the healthiest choice, then you can just use that in future, trips to the grocery store. I do want to say too, there's so much good information on the nutrition facts label, but there's a lot of information, right? Any of you who ever looked at it, there's calories and fat and total fat, saturated fat, sodium, fiber, sugar. Now there's added sugar. There's a lot of things listed on there. There's vitamins at the bottom, and we're gonna go through it in piecemeal to hopefully have that make sense. But what I usually recommend is just focusing on maybe one or two nutrients on the food label. So depending on what your individual wellness goals are or your health conditions that you're living with, pick one, like I said, one or two things. So maybe you're trying to manage your weight. You might be more focused on calories. Maybe you're someone who is living with high blood pressure and your doctor has told you that you need to limit salt or sodium. So you're really going to be checking for the sodium on those labels. Or for folks with diabetes, they might be looking at total carbohydrate. So if you try to look at too many things on a label, especially if you're comparing products, we just become, what they say, analysis paralysis, right? We're looking and we're like, I don't even know anymore because this one's lower in fat, but that one's, higher in sodium. This one's got the fiber. That one has sugars. What do I even choose? So just pick one or two things, keep it simple, and pick the things that are most relevant to you and your health at this moment.
Okay. That's a good start. Okay. So if I said I won't go, but just to clarify one little thing. And when you were talking about things to look, and you said pick one or two things. So one question I get asked a lot is, what's the difference between carbs versus sugars?
Mm-hmm. You said the difference between carbs versus sugar.
Carbs and sugar, because I know you mentioned about diabetes. If you were a diabetic and you were watching what you
Yep, that's a great question. And so sugar is actually included in carbohydrates. So when we say carbohydrates, that includes all of our starches, sugar, and fiber. And those things are actually broken out on the label. If we could go ahead and start showing our label on the screen for those who are watching on Facebook or have a screen available, you may be able to see this. It's a little small, or if you're at home and you have a package handy, go ahead and grab a package with a nutrition facts label on it and you can follow along with us. But if you look under where it says total carbohydrate is in bold. It's about 2/3 of the way to the bottom of the label. And then beneath that, it lists our dietary fiber, total sugars, and then under that, sort of indented, is the added sugars. So each of those layers, as you have a space moved over from the edge, it means that's included in the line above it. So dietary fiber and total sugars are included in total carbohydrates. And then the added sugar that's indented one further over below our total sugars, that's already included in the added sugars. So I sometimes have folks say, well, I added, the sugars and the carbs together and it's this ginormous number. You don't have to add them together. The main thing to focus on is total carbohydrates. However, as far as the impact on blood sugar for people with diabetes, let me clarify that. But it is important to know, how much sugar is in a product, because in general, we want to limit sugar. So if you're comparing two different yogurts, for instance, and they each have 20 grams of total carbohydrate, one may have, 6 grams of added sugar, and one may have 12 grams of added sugar. So in that case, when your total carbohydrates are the same, you want to opt for the one that has less added sugar, because the added sugar is something that we do want to decrease.
Okay. All right. Okay. Good. Thank you for clarifying that.
All right. So now we're going to jump into how to read a nutrition facts label, starting at the top with the serving size. So the serving size is a standardized amount of food, and it's not necessarily a healthful or an appropriate amount. And it's typically the customary amount eaten at one time. So it's not a recommendation of how much to eat. And the nutrition information listed on the label is typically based on the serving size that is in bold. And some containers and nutrition facts labels have two columns, and the double columns represent how much is typically eaten. And if the second column is how much can be consumed in one bag. So if the food can be eaten in one sitting, it'll have the serving size and then for the total bag. So knowing how many serving sizes are in a food product is important because it determines how much of each nutrient you are consuming. So what is the difference between a serving size and a portion size? So a portion size is the amount of food that you choose to eat, which may or may not be more or less than the serving size stated on the food label. So the portion size is in our control. And we can, we always talk about portion sizing, portion control, and, using the right tools can help you make the appropriate food choices and the right portion sizes for you and your goals. So you can start out by trying to portion out your foods and with measuring cups or measuring spoons. For portion control, using smaller plates and bowls is a great option. So instead of using a larger bowl, when you're using that smaller plate or bowl, it can help you leave your plate more satisfied. Talking about portion control as well, you don't typically want to snack right out of the bag or the box, even if it's a fruit or vegetable. Choosing a plate or a bowl at that time as well can help you with your portion sizes.
Well, let me ask you this, Deena. So you said portion sizes versus serving sizes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if I have a container that says 4 servings per container, then you saying that I should actually pour or count out or separate out that serving to see if that's what I want for my portion, or
so the serving size is just based on a standard amount. So it's not necessarily recommendation for you and your goals. So say that you want a snack that is about 100 calories. So for the label that's on the screen, the serving size is 1.5 cups and it's about 240 calories. So if you're trying to keep a snack that's about 100 calories, I would recommend that you eat about 1/2 cup of whatever this nutrition facts label is. Does that make sense?
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's good, because if you thinking that you're going to just do one serving to equal your 100 calories. Okay, gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. All righty. So now let's go back and talk some more about the serving sizes and how people can figure out versus how many, the bag says, like you get the potato chip bag and there it says that there are 6 servings in there.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
okay.
So for a potato chip bag, it'll say the serving size like 13 chips or 10 chips or something like that, depending on the brand and what type of chip that is. It'll provide the calories as well for that. So the amount that it says is not necessarily what is recommended, but it's just that nutrition facts. That is what is being provided. All the nutrition information, that is what is being provided on the amount of food that is listed there.
Okay. All right, so let's go back and talk about your nutrition label again, that one that's we're showing. So this says that there are 4 servings per container.
Yes.
And serving size is 1.5 cups. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so so in the calories, there's 240 calories in one serving, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I ate that whole box, I would be eating 4 times that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So about 1,000 calories.
Oh, okay. So I
Right.
think that's one thing that talk a little bit more that I think we sort of get off on is the fact that, we say serving size, but how much is that really when you're looking at your label? Does that make sense?
So I think when we're choosing what foods to eat, it's important to look at the serving size in order to make informed choices. So the nutrition facts label is not there to give us recommendation, but it's there for us to make informed choices about what we're consuming, what we're putting in our bodies. So not all of us know how much to consume on a daily basis, but the nutrition facts label is based on a 2,000 calorie diet per day. So that's just an estimate. That doesn't mean that mine or yours is 2,000 calories, but it's just an estimate, just on average. But Angie was also going to talk a little bit more about calories and how that can play into a serving size as well.
Okay. All right. Because that's the next thing on our label that you see. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so I will share a little bit about calories. Calories are, interesting. It's what we sort of look at as the biggest impact on managing our weight. You hear calories in and calories out. I actually have a little poster that says it has the definition of calories, and it says calories, and it said those tiny creatures that sneak into your closet at night and sew your clothes a little tighter. So I thought that was cute because those calories will get us sometimes, right? And we talk about carbs and fat and protein, but ultimately it comes down to when we consume too many calories, our weight wants to increase. When we don't consume enough calories, it wants to decrease. So then the $1,000,000 question is, how do I know how many calories I need, right? Like Deena said, what's on the label, and we're going to talk about percentages in a little bit, but that's based on a 2,000 calorie diet, which would be the average calorie needs for, I'll say, an average adult, a fairly young, healthy adult. As we get older, we need less calories. So like I work with a lot of folks who are, let's say, over the age of 65. And normally then we're more in the like 1,200 to 1,500 calorie range. So it does vary a little bit. Yes.
That's per day.
That's
Okay.
per day.
Mhm.
Yes. And there are a lot of resources online where you can determine what your calorie needs are in general. So, of course, you can always ask to meet with a registered dietitian, and they'll work with you to determine your specific needs, help you come up with an individualized meal plan, etc. But if that's not something that's accessible to you or you're not interested in, using some of the resources on the internet can really help. So the website myplate.gov, that's based on the plate method that our federal government has promoted as the healthy way of eating. And they have a tool on there called the My Plate Plan. And you just plug in your numbers. It'll ask you for your age, sex, height, weight, physical activity level, and you put those in and it gives you a calorie estimate. So for instance, when I put my numbers in, it gave me an estimate of 1,800 calories that I would need to actually lose a little bit of weight. There are also other apps that are available, and we're not promoting any one app over another, but just to toss a few out there. Some examples are MyFitnessPal, Lose It, Spark People, Calorie Tracker, Carb Manager, and LifeSum. And there are many more. Those are some that I've used and I know my clients have used. And most of those will have a calculator in them where you can enter in, like I said, your height, weight, age, physical activity level, your gender, and it will give you your estimated calorie needs for the day. And so that kind of helps us when we're looking at that food label. And Deena's going to talk in just a minute about our percent daily value, and that'll make a little bit more sense of how to determine, where the calories from a particular item fit into our meal plan also. But I would say in general, like giving the example of myself, if I'm following an 1,800 calorie diet, let's say if I was doing 3 meals and 3 snacks a day, that would mean about 500 calories for a meal and about 100 calories per snack. And that falls in line with what I generally recommend to my clients. Not everybody does 3 meals and 3 snacks a day, and you don't necessarily need to. But generally for snacks, aiming for about 100 calories. If you're someone who is younger, children, teenagers, even, young 20s, and especially if you're very active, you need more calories, so maybe 200 calories for a snack. If you're trying to really control your weight, you might even go less than 100 calories in the 50 to 100 calorie range. But those are at least kind of general guidelines. So we know that when we look at that snack bag of chips and it says, it's 160 calories, but there's 3.5 servings per container, then we're probably going over on our calories for our snacks at that point.
So what about those little snack bags that all comes prepared, prefixed? It has the 100 calories on it. So those are pretty much true to.
Yep, exactly. Yep, they're exactly 100 calories, and so I do recommend those. for clients to do that. The other thing is, honestly, with the price of groceries lately, I've got to talk about it. I hate to talk about it, but inflation, the price of gas, sometimes it's a little pricier to purchase things that way, right? So even just learning, okay, what's the appropriate serving size, and say, like with nuts, about a quarter cup of nuts would be, your serving size, and portioning that out yourself in like the little snack size Ziploc bags or something like that. But yes, the 100-calorie snack packs are great. I love them because it's already, it's ready to grab and go. You know how many calories are in it. You're not going to go over your portion. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. All right. Okay.
So I'm gonna let Deena share a little bit about something called the percent daily value. That's a good tool for us also.
Yeah, so the percent daily value is found on the right side, right underneath the calories, and it's in percentages, and it's a guide to the nutrients in one serving of food. So how much a particular nutrient is in that serving contributes to your total daily amount. And that's also based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So even if your needs are higher or lower, you can still use that as a guide. So 5% is considered to be low in that nutrient, and 20% is considered to be high in that nutrient. So our recommendation for when you're choosing something that is low, I want to recommend to choose less than 5% in saturated fat, added sugars, and sodium. And for trans fat, there is no percent daily value, since the FDA recommends limiting it at all costs. But you do want to limit that as well. So eating less saturated fats, added sugars, and sodium may reduce your risk for chronic disease. Saturated fat and trans fats are linked to an increased risk of heart disease. So making sure we are, for most of our nutrition facts labels, they should be less than 5%. Also, high foods that are high in sugar tend to be high in calories. So eating too much added sugars makes it difficult to meet nutrients within those calorie requirements. Also, high levels of sodium can contribute to high blood pressure. So limiting your sodium as well. For high daily values above 20%, you want to choose for high fiber, vitamin D, calcium, iron, and sometimes potassium as well. And those are in the bottom part of the food label that can be found there.
So say that again, Deena. You talk too fast. The vitamin D should be where?
So it's in the very bottom underneath.
Okay. But what should the percentage be?
So anything above 20% is considered high. So if it's less than that, that's okay, especially for those vitamins and minerals. However, there are some that you want to restrict and some that you want to increase. So it's okay for fiber, vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium to be well over that 20%, because those are ones that you want to be high in your diet. And those that you want to limit in your diet are saturated fats, sugars, and sodium. So you want those to be less than 5%.
Okay, so looking at this label that we have, if everybody can look at or can imagine, the one that says iron 6 milligrams, and it says 35%, so that's good. So if I need some iron in my system, this would be a good product to look at.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And when you look at saturated fat, that's 8%. So that's more than the recommended. So it's a little bit higher on the high end, whereas we want to keep it less than 5%.
Okay. So how do you decide which value is the most important? If you're looking at this nutritional label and you're thinking about everything in there, and how do you decide which outweighs the other?
I think it definitely depends on what your goals are. But as a general rule, making sure that you are, reducing your risk for heart disease or chronic disease in general is very important. So keeping that saturated fat and trans fat to a limit is very important. If you have high blood pressure or hypertension, reducing your sodium is very important as well.
Okay, so you'd be looking at products that has a low sodium or salt label.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay. Good. I hope this is helping somebody out there. This is helping me. Okay, so what's next on the label? Looking at the bigger picture.
Yes. So another thing that can be really helpful, typically right below our nutrition facts label or somewhere on the packaging will be an ingredient list. And sometimes this can be really helpful to look at too. You know, you may be, again, comparing two different products and maybe the nutrition facts are very similar. And you're like, well, which one should I choose? How do I know what's overall better for my health? And I think most people are aware of this, but the ingredients are listed in that ingredient list from the highest quantity to the smallest. So, you know, if sugar is listed as your first ingredient, that means that food is going to be high in sugar. Whereas if sugar shows up, you know, in spot 10 of 10 ingredients, that's not so bad, you know. And generally, the nutrition facts label will show that, but sometimes you get more information from looking at those lists of ingredients. The other thing is, you know, in general, we want to limit processed foods. We want to try to, as much as we can, eat whole foods, you know, our good fruits and vegetables and whole grains, our lean meats, low fat dairy products, that type of thing. And so a lot of processed foods have added, you know, they have additives and preservatives. So preservatives to help it last longer, and then certain additives sometimes to maintain freshness or to enhance the taste, that kind of thing. And they all have pretty long scientific names, right? So I minored in chemistry, so I can kind of, you know, relate to those names. But for the average person, you know, we look at those names and, you know, it's like, okay, I can't even pronounce this. So if there's a bunch of words on the ingredient list that you can't pronounce, then it's probably not the healthiest, you know. And generally, less is more. So the fewer ingredients in a product, the less processed it is. It doesn't have extra, you know, preservatives and additives and that type of thing. So I think that's really important to know.
Okay, good. So looking at the whole picture, bringing it all together. So when we go into the grocery store, we just need to plan to take a few minutes to, if you're going to be really conscious about the labels, to actually look at the labels and read them and spend some time reading them.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I think too, I know we had a specific label that we were looking at, Miss Wendy, when I was talking about ingredient lists. That kind of came up. It was a label for popcorn, and it has a very short ingredient list, which I like. So the ingredients were organic yellow popcorn,
And
organic
you know
palm
what?
oil.
Andrew, we're going to have to send that person a text and tell them exactly about that popcorn.
No problem.
Because
No
we're
problem.
going to follow up about that label, but it's important that we do read our labels. And so I just want to, we ran out of time, but it's amazing how informative a label can be. So thank you guys so much for joining us here on Family Health Matters. And again, I am your host, Wendy Bridges. Thank you, Angie and Deena, for being here with us on today, talking about labels. It has been an awesome conversation, and I look forward to everybody joining us every Thursday from 3 to 3:30.
Hi, this
Family
is
Health Matters.
Lamanda. I listen to Awesome Radio 106.